Okay, I think... Hello, everyone, anyone, someone.
Hey.
There we go. Yeah, okay, so cool. We are live. Live.
Now I see it.
I
There it
ran out of
goes.
time, so I'm still finishing up the last of my social media things. One of these... Amazing, I actually put it in for 8 minutes. I don't... Normally I go 5 minutes. I decided 3 more minutes will allow me to get everything done. Nope. No, that did not happen.
You find more things. Work always expands to fit whatever time you allot it
Is
to.
that how it works? Like, I swear, like that. I feel like that is how life is in general. It's like, okay, normally I have 10 minutes to do this thing, so but I always hit it right up against the edge. So I'm gonna allot myself 20 minutes this day to actually get this thing done. Suddenly, it's taking you 35 minutes, and you don't know where you are anymore. And it's like, what? How does that even work?
Sounds about right.
It's the way of things. It's the way of the universe. Let me make sure everything is good. I am actually recording this week.
Oh, wait. Should I be?
No.
Okay, you're doing it on your end. Okay.
We're just doing OBS. Yeah, last week OBS. Apparently, I double-clicked the record button last week. Still had it, but the audio was a little weaker because there was a desync thing because I had to download straight from Twitch. Sorry, anyone who watched episode 242 last week. This is 243.
Yeah, 243.
Good stuff. All right, so Brad.
Yeah, we're here. We're live. Welcome to Constantly Calibrating, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. If it's the live or recorded podcast, we have another guest this week who Josh has dug up for us to interview and talk to. And if you go ahead, tell us who have we got this week, Josh?
Oh, we have Vikram here. Vikram from Dropleaf. How you doing, Vikram?
Doing well. How about you folks?
Oh, doing lovely. Just having quite the hell of a week. I was lucky enough to go through one of the most stressful weeks of my life last week. So this weekend, my body decided, hey, you know what's going to happen when you wake up Saturday morning? You're going to wake up in the middle of the night with hives, completely from head to toe.
Sounds like some way to spend a weekend, man.
It was a hell of a way to spend the week. And let me tell you, there is nothing more fascinating than getting hives in your ear. I don't recommend it.
I'm not sure if it's bad or good that I'm no longer surprised by things that happen to you anymore. Like, I'm just like, what has Josh come up with this week that's happened in his life? Because it's all real. I just don't ever know what to expect anymore.
It's a really fascinating thing. Well, I mean, we've proven over the years that I defy all medical logic. I'm the only person I don't know of any other person who would get really stressed out about their wedding, a week later suddenly develop a latent thyroid condition that makes them allergic to shrimp. Like,
I don't want to laugh at that, but also what?
Yeah,
no. You're allowed to laugh at that. I give him so much crap and sympathy at the same time for the shrimp problem because I love shrimp. So.
I miss shrimp, but no, like years before that, I went out drinking with people. I was perfectly fine. The next night I went out drinking as well. Not heavy drinking, just a little bit. All of a sudden I got violently ill about maybe a shot glass worth of a low level alcohol beer. And that happened a few times. I noticed it started happening with bread. Went into the doctors, discovered I developed a gluten allergy. For no reason.
It's not really a thing that usually happens like later in life. That's usually like little kids.
Yeah, no, the best part is 6 weeks later, I just said, fuck it, I really want a croissant. I was in college. I liked the croissants at Arizona State's library. So I'm like, I'm going to take the risk. I went and had it. It was fine. I haven't had a gluten allergy since.
Okay, sure.
This has nothing to do with anything of any import. It's just
No.
I actually have a guest who is interested in the insanity that is my health. So yeah, hives are finally clearing up. Remembered that my wife had hives a few months ago. I was like, she still have her meds? I'm like, yeah. He's like, just go take her meds and stop being a little bitch.
Is your doctor also a good friend, I take it?
No, he's a nice guy, but he's an older gentleman. He just doesn't care. Like, he cares. Like, he cares in a health way, but he's that old-fashioned family doctor who really just wants to kind of be friendly with you. He's obviously there for his job, but he's just like, the first appointment I ever went in for, I just shot the shit with him for like 90 minutes, and I realized, what the fuck am I in a therapy session? What is going on here? This is my GP, and
Did he charge you extra that day?
No, that's why one of the reasons I like the guy. But anyways, we are so far off. Vikram.
Yes.
Actually, before I get to you, I got a thing to do with the top of the show. Hi, everyone. This is Constant Calibrating Podcast. You may know the Constant Calibrating Podcast is sponsored by the Webaround, which I've been giving the wrong address for the last 3 streams. So go to thewebaround.com/shop. That's shop, not store. You can also just go to webaround.com. Use offer code CONCALPOD. You can save yourself 10% off on a Webaround. It's awesome. It's a portable green screen. Allows you to put on your chair, your person. You can wander around. You could be anywhere you want as far as people are concerned. I love using it. It's good for streaming. A lot of fun. We also have another fun promo code here that Vikram gave us. Also CONCALPOD. And if you go to dropleaf.io, you can use that for, what was it, a free month of your service, which we're going to talk about in just a moment.
Yes.
So speaking of that, Dropleaf.
What is Dropleaf? Tell us.
I've mentioned it a few times. Let's hear about it.
Dropleaf, I will say, will not cause you to get hives. I can pretty much guarantee that. It might cause me hives on a regular basis, but y'all should be safe. So we are a subscription service for unlimited indie PC games. In other words, think like Netflix or Spotify, but for indie PC games. We're Windows only right now, but we'll be working on getting platform agnostic within about a year. We've got like 70 games. It's $5 a month right now for our first 1,000 or so users. And, we're constantly adding to our library. We'll have about 150 games by year's end and growing from there. So, what can I talk about? What questions can I answer about me or the platform or anything else?
Well, to start off, why don't we, why pursue this kind of a business model for indie gaming?
Right. So I think there's a few things going on here. One, a couple of years ago, my co-founder and I both sort of came to the realization that the process of buying an indie game, or more accurately than that, finding a game you want to play kind of sucks. And what I mean by that is, I don't know about you, but I can definitely run out of fingers and toes for the number of times that I open my Steam library and feel like it's kind of the equivalent of opening your fridge, seeing that it's packed full of food and going, well, clearly there's nothing to eat here. That feels like my Steam library about 85-90% of the time.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
So discoverability for games, finding a game that you want to spend whatever Steam sale price for to buy is really easy. I pretty much compulsively buy games that come across my feed at less than $5, and that's all the damn time. Finding a game I actually want to sit down and play is a significantly higher bar for me to clear most of the time. And so that was the problem that we found on sort of our end. And then, after talking to some developers, it turns out the process of distributing an indie game also kind of sucks. Certainly, there have been plenty of great indie successes. You go look at Steam's top 10 games, and usually a good half of those are indie games. But if you look at how these games got there, much of the time it's the result of like some famous Twitch streamer or YouTuber picking up that game and sort of giving that game its traction. That's not so much a marketing strategy as it is a lottery ticket. And in spending a lot of time poking around the indie developer community, I realized there are 2 big problems here that should basically have the same solution, right? Finding stuff you want to play is a pain. And getting your game in front of the people who want to play it is a pain. If we can play Matchmaker, we're going to fix 2 problems at once. And that was sort of the basic idea behind this business. And, I definitely cannot take all or even most of the credit behind the idea. My co-founder, Z, very much started this, and he brought me on board to be sort of the bright, shiny, talkative face of this thing. So that's why I'm here as much as anything else. So, not entirely my idea, but it's definitely a problem that I'm hugely passionate about. And yeah.
Well, I know as people who do content creation and that kind of stuff, we do a lot of different stuff. I like AAA games. They're fun, obviously. There's a reason we all play them. But I've discovered as I've gotten older, I really love indie games. The problem is when you're trying to, like in our case, write about indie games or produce videos or have people on it for interviews or any of these kind of things, there's a lack of awareness out there because there's just so much. You end up with that problem where you have a Steam library filled with 75 different roguelites, and you think to yourself, I never even liked the roguelite game. Why do I have this?
Why do I have this many of the damn things?
Yeah, so like what is there kind of situation out there? So having a subscription service kind of thing that allows people to actually then I guess you could kind of get
So it does a
matched
couple
up.
of things. Right, so it does a couple of things to help fix the problem, right? The fact that it's a subscription service does a lot to fix the monetization problems around indie games, and that's sort of why subscription makes a lot of sense for, I think, indie developers and for players as well. But the ways in which we fix the problems are a couple things here. First of all, as a subscription service, our most valuable customer is always the person who is already signed up, right? Because that's the person who's sort of our recurring user. They keep coming back month over month, and that user's money is worth every bit as much to us, and in fact worth more to us than a new user, because that is now someone we don't have to, quote unquote, advertise to, right? That's a user that's more valuable to us. An existing customer always is.
Right.
And the thing about that is when you build your platform with that model, you then start changing the way you design things. So for example, our first feature that we have on our service, right? You can download games, you can play games, all of that's up and running. It's super stable. But the first sort of core feature that isn't the basic get games on your computer and run them is a recommendation system. And the reason we built our recommendation system is simply because it is the thing that we think is going to be most important for fixing that stare in my fridge and I have no idea what the hell to eat feeling. Because what we're going to do is we're always going to base recommendations off of player habits and use those to keep feeding you a steady stream of games that we think you're going to love. And so far, it seems like it's working pretty darn well. Users seem to like the recommendations they get from us. Small sample sizes and all, but one of the things that we do very differently from Steam in that respect is Steam's recommendations are based on things you've bought. They're based on tags. They're based on reviews. They're not based nearly as much on what people actually do. And I'm sure you guys know this, but what people say they want to do and what people actually do with their time aren't the same thing. And I do not claim like that I am, I don't claim that I'm in any way blameless. I was looking at a couple of games in my library, and I realized I'd left a positive review on Meat Boy, and I haven't done that on Hollow Knight. And I've played like 10 times, 20 times as much Hollow Knight, right? I love Hollow Knight. But if you look at sort of what I've said on the internet about both games, I've definitely talked more, not counting right this second, about Meat Boy. And that's the thing you might think I like more, but it's not. It's not the thing that I played more. It's not the thing I've invested more of my time into. And it's not the thing that like sort of floats around in my brain when I'm not doing anything else useful. And so we want to make sure the recommendations we give people are based on what they actually want, not what they necessarily have responded to or said they want, not necessarily based on tags, but habits.
So then how does that work? Danny Drawn, one of our regulars in chat, made a comment. This is a brilliant idea. Is there an algorithm to match people to games?
Yes, I didn't actually write the algorithm for this, so I'm going to be really bad at explaining it. My co-founder is the technical wizard behind all of our systems. But the basic premise here is we use your play patterns and and compare those to the play patterns of people who have had similar, basically who've liked and played similar games to the ones you've liked and played to give you your recommendations. So for example, if let's say you've played the hell out of Cluster Truck, then betting on, say, our recommendation system is going to give you Redout and The Next Penelope probably. And it's going to do that because The Next Penelope and Redout are both games that are very much centered around the feeling of speed. And not because it uses that specific criteria, but because somebody else who liked Cluster Truck also ended up liking Redout and The Next Penelope. And so this, of course, gets progressively better the more users we have in our community. And it's going to get progressively better as we start getting more data bits we can add in. I'm not saying we won't use ratings. I'm not saying we won't use, user-created tags or anything like that. But ultimately, this is sort of the core of how it works. It's going off of how many sessions you've played of the game that you've played the most of, and then how that compares to other people who've played a lot of that game and what they've played afterwards.
I love the idea that Danny's saying. I like how it's based on playtime, because that's something I've always noticed. I don't think a lot of us when we play games realize how much we sink into this game. We sometimes refer to and obviously there's a lot of things that make a big difference. I mean, a game could be your favorite game of all time, that only has a 12-hour story that you've played once and you're so emotionally devastated you never play it again, but you still love that experience. But a lot of us, I don't think, realize. Recently, I decided to buy, for instance, XCOM 2's War of the Chosen expansion. It had a good sale. I loved XCOM, Enemy Unknown and XCOM 2, so I thought, what the hell, I'll pick it up. I expected to sink, 20 hours over a month or something, like here and there. I sank 25, 30 hours in the last 6 days, despite the fact that I claim I have no time to do anything because I'm accidentally staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning every night.
Right.
But I decided to look at my played time just coincidentally when I Alt F4'd out of the game because I was so angry about how something happened. I killed myself and almost the entire Constant Calibrating team. Whoops. On Iron Man.
Again.
Lovely. So anyways, but I made a mistake. I happened to look at my playtime and I saw how much I've played the game today or last week, and I was like, wow, I would never have thought of this game as a game I really enjoyed, just kind of past thing. But I started thinking about that, and now you mentioning playtime being something you guys are analyzing to see.
Right.
It's just interesting that that way of looking at stuff.
It makes sense though. Like,
yeah.
Why has no one ever done that before? Like, playtime means something.
Playtime equals fun time.
And we don't just use playtime; we also use number of sessions, I believe.
That makes sense too.
Because we're actually going to be shortly adding like the Doodle God games to the service, not because. And, those are very snacky games. You play them for like 20 minutes, but if somebody seems to love that and keep coming back to it, maybe it doesn't rack up the same number of hours, but it's going to rack up a lot of sessions. Certainly, when I've had it had the browser version of it, I've played an absolutely obscene amount of that game in terms of number of sessions. So, we absolutely are using that as well. In terms of why no one's done it, it's kind of a question of businesses only ever really do the shit they're incentivized to do by the way their business is set up. And Steam isn't incentivized to do this. They don't really have a good reason to do it. One, they're the unquestioned market leader, right? Everyone's on Steam. I'm on Steam. I've already admitted to being on Steam. And two, most of their revenue comes from these titles that are already spending $100 million of their own money marketing themselves, right? Steam gets a lot of its revenue from these big AAA projects, and big AAA projects are things that are designed to be sold once. So they're designed with that. They're bright and flashy, and they have these big explosions everywhere, and somebody sinks $100 million into marketing it, and if it's EA, they probably do something horribly offensive along the way. And I'm sorry, I'm still kind of annoyed about their Sin to Win thing from Dante's Inferno, and their...
Wow.
Have you heard about this?
No, just I haven't heard Dante's Inferno mentioned in like 4 years.
It's fair. It hasn't been relevant in 4 years. I just hold a grudge, I guess. But EA's marketing arm regularly does things that make us all look like tone-deaf adolescents, which really annoys the crap out of me because I don't think of myself as a tone-deaf adolescent, certainly. But I'm sorry, where was I going with this? So Steam doesn't really have the incentive to build this, but we do, because our ultimate goal needs to be when somebody signs up, they stick around for life, right? That's how our business is set up to work. And one of the things that was so important to us is we looked at the industry and went, a lot of the ecosystem and just like space around games it's kind of fucked. Pardon the language, but...
oh, no, you're fine.
You're fine on the show.
And we kind of looked at that and went, how can we set up our business so that the business incentives are always in the right places to make sure we're fixing the things we want to fix? And so, for example, as a subscription service, we have an incentive to keep users. So we always want to match users with the games they're actually going to play. Not the ones they say they're going to like, but the ones they're going to get lost in, right? And that's what the user wants too. Similarly, with developers, they want to get in front of people who will play their game. And so by having that same incentive, that fixes a lot for us. And I think it fixes a lot for the industry as a whole. Similarly, one of the things that's very important to us is making sure we build a community that's welcoming to other people and welcoming to everyone, right? Games can't just be for straight white dudes. Straight white dudes are great. Please don't take offense. But
I mean, none really taken.
Fuming. But also, we want to make sure the space around games is welcoming to the people who are actually increasingly making up the player base, right? Adult women are a bigger chunk than teenage men for PC games. That is an actual statistic that blows my mind on a regular basis, but it's also, true. And so one of the things that's important about our community then is making sure our community is a place people are excited to come back to, and that specifically draws in maybe non-traditional gamers. And so by making sure that we have that same incentive to keep everyone on board, we make sure that even if I'm not around and Z's not around a few years from now, the way the business is set up to fix a lot of the problems in the industry, basically. And that's sort of why we started this. So we had to put a lot of thought into how to design our revenue share and how to do everything else so it makes the space around games better for gamers, for developers. So that's what we wanted.
I mean, it seems like you guys really did something that not a lot of games and games-related entertainment companies do. You actually really laid some groundwork and laid some foundation for this instead of just being like, we have an idea, let's just go fucking do it. You're like, you actually have some. I like the forward-thinking mentality. It's something that is massively lacking across the entire game industry.
No, I mean, I don't think it's just our industry, right?
It's all industries, particularly
it's everyone and everything. You have to plan for this stuff or it never happens, though.
Mm-hmm. I would say so. So just doubling back a little bit, we do actually have a question from Voodoo Neto saying that does your algorithm have any way of accounting for idle gameplay?
Is his question like in terms of games that are tappers or idler games, or in terms
I just think like I assume based on just going AFK, if he or she accidentally leaves their client open, would it impact gameplay or gameplay recommendations?
The short answer is it depends for how long. So if you've left it open for a couple of hours or something to that effect, it certainly won't. It won't treat that as not part of the game, I think. But it is the case that if you've left your game open for like 24 hours, or I don't remember what the number is, but if you've left your game open overnight, basically, it won't count that in your play recommendations.
So essentially, you passing out at your computer won't get counted.
Or we were looking at one of our first tech users who had managed to log like an ungodly 50 hours playing Evoland in 2 days, and of course, no, not quite. He had just managed to leave it running in the background for 2 days.
As my wife checked out, I want to say it was Endless Legends. She got she wanted to play the game. She started playing the tutorial, realized, I'm tired, I don't really feel like finishing this. And she said, well, I don't want to restart it though, so she just left the game running. That game stayed open on her fucking computer, I think, for like 2 weeks. Like she has, her Steam has more hours logged into that than any other game. And
there's no more than anyone else who's played that game at that point.
Probably, at least at that point in time. And it was just one of those things. And then finally, she just walks over to the computer, obviously, and hits Alt F4, and be like, "Yeah, I'm just not playing that." But so that's a curious question,
right? And so it will rule out sessions that are above a certain length. I don't know what that length is, but it's something where it's along the lines of if somebody obviously fell asleep, then we don't really want to count that in their recommendations. No.
Right. Fair enough. I have an interesting technicality question, I suppose.
Of course.
At what point is your cutoff for what an indie game is? Like, how do you classify whether this is something that you want to host on Dropleaf because it's an indie game, and where does it, like, is it like, oh, we're not taking anything from Activision, Ubisoft, EA, or is it just like, maybe they're the publisher, but it's still an indie title because of the developer? How do you decide what to carry?
I think to some extent the test on this is I'll know it when I see it. But for example, that's not a statement about polish or visual quality either, because with Unreal and Unity floating around and being as powerful as they both are, you can absolutely get games of a quality that you would not expect a 4 or 5 or 10 person team to be able to pull out. We've seen that with Arc. We've seen that recently with Hellblade. One of the games on our service, Redout, looks like something that was not made by 4 dudes in Italy. It was totally made by 4 dudes in Italy. And so, we're not talking about visual polish or quality level when we say indie, but in general, what we're talking about is games that were made without the backing of a major studio or publisher. Now, if they've gotten picked up by a major studio since then or a major publisher since then, we're still happy to work with them, certainly, but that's going to be a question of the publisher wanting to work with us. But in general, we're happy to work with indie publishers. In fact, a decent chunk of our games come from Tiny Build, who, of course, do a lot of really great work in the indie space.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, they're great guys, and they do a lot of great work. And I think they promote some really wonderful games. We'll hopefully be, adding Hello Neighbor when that launches as well. And so, yeah, we're happy to work with indie publishers. We're happy to work with people who have published indie games, even if they're not an indie publisher in and of themselves. And I feel like I'm kind of rambling now, but I think I answered the question somewhere in there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Go ahead, Brad.
I guess to further, not to throw your plans out on the floor and everything, but like,
no worries.
Is it possible that you would ever hit a point where you would be willing to go and work with like the big guys like EA and everything, and say start doing your Assassin's Creed on this thing if the money and obviously the deals were right?
Right. And so one of the things that's important to us is a lot of our business is built on the trust of developers and dev teams. So we're never going to do anything that kind of shits on that, because that's how we got to where we are. And I think to some extent, if we end up just sort of dumping things with $1 million advertising or $100 million advertising budgets into the pool with all of the indie games we have, we're not going to end up with the platform or the ecosystem that we want. And I think it may even be counterproductive to our ability to get and keep users. So we do certainly to keep users. And so we do need to find some kind of other system or some kind of workaround there, like either base it off of different revenue pools, maybe do like what cable providers or Sling does, where you have your baseline indie service and then you add on the Ubisoft bundle or whatever else, and that sort of keeps the revenue streams separated out. We might just be able to do it entirely on the strength of curation and matching users to their specific preferences, so that indie developers and players of indie games still get the core qualities they want out of this service, and the people who do occasionally want a bigger game sprinkled in get that too. The short answer is we're looking at something that's about 2 years out at least, I think. The nice thing for us is we're not really limited in terms of technology. If you look at what other services have run into is their tech stacks and have often created the issue of, well, we just can't accommodate this game. And realistically, for us right now, anything that runs in Windows will run on our service. Like, we can use Microsoft Word if we really want to, as we can upload, download that and run it. Our platform does not care as long as it runs in Windows. And that's going to be true for any other platform we expand to, where the Mac client's never going to care as long as it runs on Mac. And when we do have an Android client, that's never going to care as long as whatever the program is runs in Android. And so we do have that as a significant advantage in terms of adding those games later on down the line. But we're definitely not there yet. Our big priorities, I think, are right now, of course, building out our user base, building out our content network, and also, beyond that, I feel like maybe the step before that is starting to get into publishing a little bit first, much like Netflix does their own original series. We're going to look at doing the same things at some point down the line.
For sure. So, talking about like the value to customers and also the value to your own company, you mentioned the price point right now for these early adopters is $5. What's going to be the growth of that price point once you hit that cutoff point? Right.
So we're going to go to 10. Obviously, that's sort of the standard subscription pricing thanks to Netflix. And we're going to stay there. We might try raising the price in the future, depending on what we have and what the market will bear. But the nice thing about what we're always going to do is if you sign up at $5 a month, your price will never go up from there. So when we raise prices, you'll still be locked in at 5. And similarly, if we ever do raise prices from 10, regardless of how high our price point ever gets, you're locked in at 10 for the lifetime of your subscription. Stripe makes it really easy to do that, and we definitely want to make sure we take care of the people who believed in us and came on board when we were a couple of nameless jackasses up in Seattle, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great method of doing things. I like that idea. And, well, it's what you were discussing earlier, that whole sense of building community, which we talk about this on the podcast. We've been doing this for 5.5 years. It's one of the things I've been harping on for more than half the time we've been doing it. That companies are finally starting to get around to is the idea that communities build your products. It doesn't matter how big you are. If you don't have a loyal community, even the biggest thing in the world can fail. So
that's definitely true. I think one of the Warcraft, if you look at WoW's success, World of Warcraft, it's basically entirely on the strength of its community, right? It's the fact that, I have so many friends that I've made through that game is the thing that makes me go, maybe I'll log back in. Like, I haven't played in a couple years, but it's the thing that brought me back the 2 times the last 2 times I left. And it's probably the thing that's going to drag me back this time is, my former arena partner going, hey, so they changed this and you should come back and play now.
Yeah.
Josh doesn't know anything about being dragged back into WoW at all.
So this podcast exists because of World of Warcraft. My entire company loosely exists because of World of Warcraft.
That's awesome.
More accurately for Star Wars Galaxies, but Warcraft will get the brunt of the blame for it. But yeah, no, Brad and I have a strict rule in our friendship that he's not allowed to try to sell me on WoW anymore. Otherwise, he has to adopt my child.
I never agreed to that.
Oh, I know. That's the agreement I made with Charnel. You don't have to be involved. Wait.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Well, in your life, I certainly have God knows how many hours played on that thing.
Oh yeah, no, God, no, how many hours, how much money, how many poor choices. I have not logged in since about a week before my wife and I got married, where Brad married us in game. So, and I say that very loosely.
That's really cool.
I went out of my way to make you a tuxedo and a wedding dress, and that was about it.
Yep, that was it was good enough.
Like, here.
We definitely had a couple of guild weddings happen, which were always great. And at least one of which we all actually just flew out for, which was a really great time.
Wow.
But it was more our raid group than our guild. But I usually end up quitting World of Warcraft whenever it starts feeling like a second job. And I'm one of those people who I can't just sort of sit in the back quietly. I'm very, very bad at that. And so I usually end up doing something like raid leading and then end up hating it and then end up quitting. And that's sort of my arc through World of Warcraft is this time it'll be different. I'll just stick to the sides and just do arenas and stuff. No. Somehow or the other, I have the stupid raid icon over my name again.
I totally relate to that at every level. Jumping back, Voodoo is asking us another question. Here, if it's not too complex of a question to ask here, what sort of royalty or hosting plans are currently available for indie developers?
Yeah, of course. So the short version is that we revenue share with our developers. And the way that works is effectively we do a percentage split that I believe is the best in the industry. We take net revenue, we split it, we take a percentage, developers take a percentage, and that is certainly as a percentage better than Steam and better than other subscription services are on a developer standpoint. Obviously, that's not a number I want to leave in an interview,
right?
But it is industry leading, at least for now. And so we then take that developer pool of revenue, and that is assigned out on a time played per active user. So basically, if we have some revenue pool and 10,000 active users, each user assigns out revenue based on their individual time played. So let's say $100,000 comes into the developer pool, and there's 10,000 active users that month. Each user assigns out $10. So for example, if our first user plays 70% of game A and 30% of game B, then they assign 7 and 3. And if our second user is an even split, they do 5 and 5. If our third user only plays one game, they just assign all of their revenue to that game, and so on and so forth. Unsurprisingly, the systems to track this took a little while to build, but it was important that we do it this way on a few levels. First of all, time play, I acknowledge that time played is slightly an imperfect measure for how much someone enjoys a game, but to a first approximation, it's the best simple one we have, I think. And second, it's really important that we do that on a per user basis, because otherwise, of course, a time waster game or something like that happens to get on board and takes over like 90% of the time from 5% of the players starts getting way too much of the revenue. So we wanted to make sure the model is something that works out well for developers and works out well for developers even if they do have shorter games, because it turns out we don't actually create more time for you to play in any given month, right? People still basically have about as much time as they have, and so our typical user only ever plays maybe 2 to 4 games in a month. Because that's about what anyone's got time to do, right? Most of our users, at least for now, are adults. We all have jobs. We all have lives. We all have families and children and whatever else. And so that's about the maximum number of games people play. So nothing ever gets too granular. And it doesn't end up penalizing people with shorter games much. It's still obviously a better system for somebody with a longer game, but it still works pretty well on all counts.
That's a really cool system you have going. Like, I'm really, like, it just.
I want to think that's what I would try to do, but I have no idea how hard that is to do.
I'm trying to imagine that.
I have no idea how hard that is to do either. I have technical people who do that stuff, so I might make it sound simple. I'm sure it took an ungodly amount of work from Z and Andrew to build those systems out. I genuinely cannot imagine. They bust their asses to make this thing better every day, and I'm kind of in awe of the work they put in always. So yeah,
really cool. So let's talk a little bit about you. What's your you've talked about how you're not the tech guy behind this. You're the face. You're talking about this. So what is your background that ultimately led you to this?
Okay, so let's see. I actually have spent most of my career and most of my adult life, sort of by extension, working for the Princeton Review, which is a supplemental education, basically test prep company. Yeah. I started with them as a teacher in 2007 because trying to find a job as a recent college graduate in 2007 was challenging, very challenging, because that's, of course, right when the market decided to faceplant. And so they kind of slowly took over my life and moved me into teacher training and instructor management and curriculum design. And eventually, by process of, well, you're good at this, maybe you'll be good at this other somewhat related thing, I got moved into the business development side of the company a few years back. And so what I'd been doing prior to going full-time on Dropleaf is I've been running business development for the northwest part of the country for Princeton Review. And so, a lot of that is forming partnerships, building relationships, and then also doing a lot of sales and marketing and event marketing, all of which are, of course, the sort of skills that I bring to Dropleaf is networking with developers and then also marketing and working with growth marketers and things like that to make sure that, we are, growing and whatnot. I've also done a lot of organizational leadership and administration and mentorship and things like that. And so that's sort of my relevant work background. My slightly less relevant work background is I've also been a paramedic and I've been a birthday party magician, which, is probably the weirdest job I've had. I've been a food writer. I've been a cocktail writer as well. And that was a thing that I did for a little while. I think those are all of the strange jobs that I've held in my life. I think that's it for weird jobs, but
I mean, it's nice to have just this whole entire array of things. I mean, that's where a lot of our best ideas and stuff come from in life, is just the weird shit that we've done to get to where we're at. So
for sure, it's definitely been an interesting ride to get here, and this definitely feels like the first thing that I found that I'm that I'm doing the thing I need to be doing. Like, this feels like the problem that I'm that's very important for me to be working on solving as much as anything else. And so I'm this has been amazing. We obviously did the whole startup accelerator thing with Y Combinator over the summer, and that was wonderful. I've actually been full-time on this project since the start of June, because that's when we got funding, and that, by extension, that's when we could leave our jobs without losing our homes. And so,
which is an important aspect when you're doing any kind of startup.
Absolutely. And so, that's about how long we've been on this full time. And I think we've made some amazing progress in that time. Actually, at the start of June, we basically had a janky tech demo, and that's basically it. We had a couple games, but, almost everything we've done in terms of making the client usable and in terms of all of the payment systems actually working and hell, the games we have has come since then. So that's sort of the work we've put in over the last few months.
I mean, that's a lot of great work you've done. Obviously, it shows how useful the funding you got was, that you put to good use and grow so rapidly to this point.
And I mean, not just the funding. I will say, the great thing about the Y Combinator program is the mentorship. So our direct mentor was a guy named Jeff Ralston, and Jeff is the guy who created Yahoo Mail. And Jeff is sort of So Jeff is kind of the I want to be Jeff when I grow up person for me right now. And he is, he's absolutely brilliant, and his advice, and occasionally his just stop fucking worrying about this and just build your damn product, was incredibly valuable. I don't know that we would have made it nearly as far without his support and the support of all of the wonderful people we got to meet and work with, including, of course, Michael, who you guys know, and who introduced us, actually. So that's been great.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. Speaking of which, it's really great. Just my brain just wanted a size. By anyone who's wondering why I'm flapping at apparently nothing, there's a gnat that is, I guess, attracted to my hives. I don't really know. Some weird shit going on in this house. Taking it back. But
not like fun.
No, it's an interesting thing. So yeah, Okay, I'm going to go two different directions. So first off, just with what you were saying, with the mentorship program, I love that that's an aspect of it. That's something I've felt that in a lot of business, not even just business stuff, but just a lot of things, is something that's sorely lacking in just in education almost. Because education, whether we're talking about someone in preschool up to a college age, up to later education through your career, a lot of us at all ages are just kind of thrown into this thing, and that's life, and just told to go off. Meanwhile, there's, hundreds of years ago, and 100 years ago, there were apprenticeships and things like that.
Right.
Having a mentor is such a valid, awesome, viable thing. So I'm glad that there's something like this Y Combinator program that allows you guys to have that. And then from someone who created fucking Yahoo Mail, it's just even better.
Jeff is absolutely brilliant, and so was everyone we met through that program was genuinely amazing. Getting to do office hours with Michael Seibel, who's one of the founders of Twitch, was again one of those, just one of those great moments. And he's Michael Seibel is a very kind person, but he's also very, very direct and has absolutely no bullshit to him. So he will walk in and say, okay, so here's what you need to fucking do. And if you haven't fucking done this, you have no chance in hell. And the great thing about this is he's right. He's right every single goddamn time. And so that was always really helpful in terms of advice as well.
That's awesome. Well, then doubling back across the Y Combinator thing, the reason we now know you is because our, at this point, old friend Michael Susswall, formerly of Pony Studios, now of what's Michael's thing? I don't have
Standard Cognition.
Standard Cognition now. He sent me an email and he's like, "Well, we shot the shit for a little bit." And he's like, "Hey, I got this guy Vikram. You should talk to him." And I'm like, "What should I talk to him about?" He's like, "Oh." And then then we actually started discussing what the hell
that
it is.
Like a conversation with Michael, honestly.
Yeah, so those who aren't aware, Michael, as mentioned, was one of the founders of Pony Studios, made Calibrating Kingdom, and is used to be a frequent interview and assorted guest of ours, who the two of us had escalating challenges to see how we can make interviews more and more uncomfortable for all parties.
Thing?
Yeah, so first interview we ever did with them, they invited us out for dinner and drinks at Rooster Teeth Expo 2014. Their intern at the time said he knew a place. It took us on a walk that ended up being 2.5 fucking hours to get to a restaurant.
I know a place.
I know a place. To the point that we used to have him, and I had an audio clip, and he used to pop up in podcasts as appropriate on the side screen.
I know a place.
Yeah, just saying I know a place. Went to that, had drinks, went back to the hotel lobby. We found like a pool area and had the weirdest fucking interview I've ever done in my life up to that point. So I said to him, that was the weirdest interview I've ever done. He's like, we should do it again next year and let's see how weird we can get. So next year, drinking again, and I made a comment, some joke. I think I saw like a snippet of one of his people he worked with TJ, like his underwear or something. I made a comment about TJ's underwear, and Michael just suddenly goes, "We should do an interview in our underwear," and I'm like, "Sorry, what now?" So yeah, we ended up at RTX 2015, going up to our hotel room, all taking our pants off, and did an interview completely. Straight-laced interview, and yeah, but pantsless, and then stood up, and then it's just a line of boxers, and that's
the story. I did not take Michael at face value. I am currently wearing pants, not that you can tell from this picture.
I may or may not be. Who knows?
Okay, it's good to know the origin of that story, though. It was just like why is this a thing? How is this a thing?
What was the one we had planned for 2016?
2016, if they had come to the event, it was going to be all of us. We were going to get a room with a king-size bed, and we were going to all cuddle up into the bed, and I was going to do the interview with my arms around him, TJ, John, Jordan, whoever the hell we could fit in that bed, and we were just going to do the interview that way. And then I think 2017 was scheduled to be at a urinal in the hall. Again, I don't really, I don't know. Rule of thumb is if you want, both of us are very professional people in our jobs, but if you put Michael and I in our room and with a camera, we're going to do something stupid. And it ends up with good views on YouTube. So I'm going to keep doing that stuff.
Fair enough.
Speaking of which, I need to email him about a podcast appearance. Anyways, that's a whole that is a whole other side thing. So yeah, no, I just wanted to bring that up because you'd asked about it in the pre-show before we went live.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that pantsless wasn't a requirement. That's that was a thing I did want to clarify, and seemed important to be aware of. So,
Danny in our chat asking, so we can look forward to a urinal interview soon. Danny, Danny, you know me in person. You've heard my dumb ideas. There's crazy stuff to come throughout 2017 and 2018.
I will do a restroom interview with you guys at Rooster Teeth Expo, whenever the next one is.
If you're there, the next one will probably be July or August of next year. So, we will. That'll be a thing. Crap! Now I gotta look into microphones. Okay. That being said, so we've got. I don't know where this. Thank you for coming on this show. I haven't had a good guest interview, not since I think Chris Avalone coming on the show. I've had a good derailing interview like this. I love it.
I have. So you covered your work background, but how did we get to gaming from your stuff? How long have you been a gamer? And you mentioned WoW, obviously. And I don't want to go down that road because we'll be here for 2 hours. I promise you. Yeah. But how did you go from teacher business stuff to gaming, and what's your personal gaming stuff?
So I am actually, and this has been true for a while, I think, certainly for most of my adult life, I'm a little bit more of a board gamer than I am a video gamer. I run a Dungeons & Dragons game that has run for about 7 years.
Whoa, shit.
I believe I am the third DM on this game now, and we have switched systems to the Fate RPG system because we went from Hunt the MacGuffin to political thriller for the sort of big capstone blow-off story. So we're now in political thriller mode, playing through Fate. Game is semi-remote. So I do a lot of tabletop stuff. I love board games. And yeah, I'm definitely a gamer as well. The first video game I remember playing is, I'm sure this is a very common one, but Sonic the Hedgehog. And I've never really stopped being a gamer since then, I think. I will say World of Warcraft probably makes up still the bulk of my played video game hours, just because it's World of Warcraft and it has a tendency to eat everyone's life. But that's sort of my background and interest in gaming. And interestingly, the reason I know Z, and also the neat reason I know Z's wife as well, is through a board gaming group. So there's this board gaming group in Bellevue, Washington, which is sort of the east side of Seattle. And this is how we met. We met through this like 7 or 8 years ago. And, for Z, this has probably been the most useful social group he's ever had, just by virtue of the fact that he got his first job at Microsoft from someone he knew through that group. He met his wife through that group. He met me through that group. And there's one other story here. I think somebody sold him a car who was also part of that group, but I don't remember what that last one is. And so that's how I actually met my co-founder. And sometime last year, or maybe late the year before that, Z was talking about this idea of his and this thing that he had sort of started kicking around, some of the ideas of how to build. He was like, I don't really know how to market or sell anything or do biz dev stuff, but you do. You should totally come on board with this. And I was like, wait, yes, absolutely, yes. This is exactly a thing that will, fix a lot of the stuff about games as a space, I think, which bugged the crap out of me, certainly, and I know bugged the crap out of a lot of other people. Games, I think for a lot of us, those of us who are gamers as adults, regardless of how well-adjusted we may be now, we were probably the weird kids growing up. And certainly I was. And, games as a space were very much a thing that I drew a lot of comfort from. They were very much a thing that I was able to find community in. And the fact that, that experience is so fucking powerful. And it's so important to what makes games great, which is why the community side of this company and this, platform is so important to me, because that's why I'm still a gamer. That's why if you look at almost anything we have, somewhere towards the bottom, you'll find the words welcome home, because that's what we want to be. And that's what games can be, I think, for so many people who don't quite feel like they belong, for younger people or even adults who've sort of learned to come across as fairly normal. It's still a place to be weird and obsessive and nitpick about what kind of hit dice something is using, right? Like that's a thing that I love doing, but it's definitely not a thing I tend to do in, let's call it polite company. And so because this is just going to start going in circles here, but that's a big part of why this project appealed to me so much, is just games are great. The communities that form around games can be home for so many people who don't necessarily find their community easily. And that's hugely important.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, not just the fact that I do coverage on games or talk to people about gaming and stuff like that. My career, I probably would not have met my wife if not for gaming. Like, my child wouldn't exist if not for gaming. Like, there's so many different threads I can pull at that I'm like, well, maybe this would happen, but gaming led me on a very specific road to confidence and then to learning more about myself, which then led me to different things like discovering I wanted to host a podcast. That came from a love of Mass Effect 3, and the Mass Effect series is what led to this. So that whole trajectory led into this, which then led into, oh, I'm actually like a social person. I like talking to people. I'd never considered marketing or PR or talking in front of human beings in my life, and then I wanted to talk about Mass Effect, so I started a podcast, and then I'm suddenly going to events, and I'm having people such as yourself on a show and shooting the shit about how to make the game space better. And that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. It's it's one of the two things, I think, that because games are inherently interactive, it's the communities that form around games are so much more important than the communities that form around other media. At least I think they are, because of the nature of the fact that games are things that you don't just play by yourself, and even the ones that do, they're still back and forth, right? It's not a passive experience, it's an active one. And I think that's a big deal. And obviously games as art are every bit as important, I'd say, but because they're the only real artistic medium that you get to actually live the experience, which is
right.
it's what makes so many games that are deeply moving as deeply moving as they are. It's why, Papers, Please sounds like a terrible concept for a game until you actually sit down and play it, and then you're like, oh my god, I feel terrible. Like, in the way that the best media makes you feel like shit. Like, obviously a bit of a weirdly worded thing there, but, it's one of those things that makes this medium so powerful.
I would definitely have to agree. I think it's an amazing thing, and love it. So, kind of into the end of the hour, as it were, is there any other aspects of Dropleaf at all that you would like to discuss that you feel we may have not touched on?
Yeah, for sure. Just as a quick note here, actually, we do not stream games. I feel like this is a thing I need to say in all caps as many times as I possibly can, because, of course, anyone who spent enough time around games knows that streaming games is usually a fairly bad experience in terms of trying to play a streamed game. So we download the game locally to your computer. It takes about 60 to 90 seconds for a typical game. And at that point, it's just encrypted and running from your machine. So we don't stream games. And I think that's important to the fact that as far as the experience goes, it's, our service is very stable. Obviously, nothing has perfect uptime, but no one's managed to find a way to bring our servers down yet. Nothing's crashed yet. And, it's been up and running for a couple of months. So that's a pretty, I think, encouraging sign for us. And so, yeah, we don't stream games. So there's no lag. There's no weird latency issues like that. And beyond that, I think we are actually adding a bunch of games this week. One of the ones we're really excited about is Universe Sandbox 2. Have you guys heard about this game?
I played the original Universe Sandbox, so okay. I know of the second.
They actually pulled that one off of Steam because they wanted to focus more on their new game, but it's constantly updating, and it is, of course, the most absurdly literal god game that exists. You get to just kind of fuck with planets a lot, and so I'm super excited about that one.
It's definitely a game, at least for the original, it's a game that could either be the most boring experience of your life or the most engaging, because it's really what you put into it. If you just hop in and want to be told what to do, you're going to probably get bored pretty quickly. But if you're like, can I slam 2 planets together? Can I do this? Can I do that? You're going to probably be playing that for 12 hours. And trust me, I did it. You lose complete track of your life.
It's a sandbox in the truest sense. What you get out of it is definitely going to be based on your willingness to just kind of screw around with the physics engine a lot. It's almost similar to Kerbal Space Program in that sense, where there's not a lot of handholding, there's not a lot of guidance, though it is less directed than that is, of course.
For sure. All right. I think from my end, that covers every aspect. I think, Brad, do you have any other final thoughts?
Questions? No, I can't think of anything at this point. It would be just me like asking you questions that I could find out by going to your website and looking at your library. So it's like, do you have this game? Do you have this game? Well,
speaking of which, we already mentioned this earlier, but for anyone who's joining us towards the end here, go to dropleaf.io to find out more about this product. Go find out more, subscribe, and if you do subscribe, you get your first month free if you use ConCalPod, which is case sensitive, apparently.
It is case sensitive, yes.
Yeah, so it's really awesome. I love what you guys are doing. I love the idea of this product, and I like the mentality you guys have. Like, I'm not just trying to suck up to you or anything like that, but it's like legitimately, like, it's the mentality. Like, anyone can kind of pull off one of these. Not anyone, but anyone can kind of like go down this direction of trying to pull off one of these kind of stylization things. Like subscription stuff is huge right now, but it seems like you and your partner are really like thinking about the future and making sure that every step of the way, everything, you have your goals aligned and you're hitting your goals. And if it doesn't make sense, then how do we hit the goal differently?
I think, and I think that's really important, right? Like, yes, subscriptions are huge, but before you start trying to build a subscription business, you damn well better know why subscriptions are huge and how you can use that to solve the problems that you want to be solving, right? It's very much the case that the best businesses, and this is probably the biggest cliche in business, the best businesses exist to solve a problem, not build a product. And so what the product you build should be a reflection of the problem you're trying to solve, not the other way around. You shouldn't build something and then hope it solves somebody's problem somewhere. So.
Yeah, that I think that should be an obvious thing, and it's not at all whatsoever to most people. So, where we already gave the web address, but just again, where can people find any and all additional information they may want?
So all of our information lives on our website at dropleaf.io. We've also got a Facebook page, which has regular updates whenever we add a new game. It's just facebook.com/dropleafgaming. We also have a Twitter, which has basically the same set of updates on a slightly different timeline, and that's at dropleafgaming. So you can find out more about us through those channels. Most of what we post right now are updates and occasional blog posts. We actually just published a blog post to our blog, though, about diversity and inclusion in the Mortal Kombat franchise, which I basically wrote at like 3 a.m. a few weeks back because my brain decided to do this to me. So we got a blog post out of that.
I have to read this. The degree of obsession I have with the Mortal Kombat universe is really it's upsetting.
So it's basically about the fact that the essentially the new generation heroes from MKX are arguably the best done, like, inclusive group of characters that I have seen in a AAA franchise in the last 10 years. Cassie, Takeda, Jackie, and Kung Jin are just, they're so, like, the story is dumb as shit. Like, Mortal Kombat's plotline is asinine. But those 4 characters are some of the best multi-dimensional characters I've seen in games, and they definitely don't look like the Gears of War protagonist set, right? Like they're people, they're quirky, they're weird. Like Takeda is one of my favorite characters in games right now because like he's an obvious badass, but he's not like needlessly macho. He's goofy and he's kind of adorkable, and but also he will fuck your shit up really quickly. And I love that character. Similarly, like Jackie Briggs is, again, another amazing, amazing character because she's not a stereotype. I realize it's kind of sad that I should feel grateful for this, but she's not a stereotype. She's kind of amazing. And so I ended up feeling the need to write a think piece about this a couple of weeks back. And so that happened.
I'm already pulled it up because I'm going to read it tonight before I go to bed.
He's going to read it.
This is now like
I will hear about it later too.
I will be potentially be discussing that. Like, one of our big things is we try to discuss, despite the fact that we are a company that is largely straight white dudes. Diversity is just one of my things. Because I don't know how to go out there and be like, hey, we need women and people of color to work with us. Like, I don't want to shout that out there kind of thing. But like, but I love reading up and seeing how people are trying to bring that in. And I've never, until you said it, I never thought about the new Mortal Kombat characters in that way. So that, like, I'm really interested.
Yeah, I could genuinely go on about this, and the blog post that you actually see in front of you is about a quarter of the length of the original thing I wrote, which was, my editor was like, no, you are not posting this. This is a deranged stream of consciousness. But
oh, that's absolutely wonderful. I'm going to link this into chat just for anyone curious.
I actually do have one more question.
Yes, of course.
And it's kind of a fun one. What indie game is out there right now that you guys really want that you don't have?
Hollow Knight. I have sunk so much goddamn time into this, and I do not know how to get the Team Cherry people to respond to my damn emails. So I'm gonna poke at a couple options, but I love that game so damn much. It's beautifully atmospheric. It's got a lot of the core engagement of a Souls-like game with a lot of the exploration element of a Metroidvania. You spend so much. Granted, you spent a shitload of time with backtracking, but they've done a lot of things to make the backtracking itself compelling. Your character is. They do such a good job of ramping up the complexity of the gameplay as you learn more. Like, every time you get better, there's another trick for you to pick up. And it is Souls-like. It's also it's in the sense that it's beautifully atmospheric. It's just like everything about the game is visually perfect. I think like it's a stylized art, but it's also
right.
Yeah, no, it's right. There's always this one game that I feel like I'm chasing after, and it takes a while to get. I eventually seem to get most of those, but it was initially Tumblestone for us, where it felt like, God damn it, these people really don't like us. And I'm actually good friends with the developers now, but we did get their game on board. After that, it was Universe Sandbox, which we just got, and it was very much the case that they were skeptical about the model, but we were able to sort of show them why it would work for them. And so this feels like the next game I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of time chasing, honestly, because it's sort of the one I think is another great hit to have on board.
Absolutely.
That's cool. I like that. I mean, obviously, it's a very new model that you're working with, so it's going to take time to sell people on it. As far as Hollow Knight goes, yeah, I've not played it personally, but our buddy Jen, RT_LowZelda on Twitch, for anyone curious, I think a while back was streaming the shit out of the game, and while I was only able to catch bits and pieces, I know the art style was just like amazing. But that's kind of the hallmark of the indie development space the last few years, is no matter what kind of game you want to play, there's something that's extraordinarily pretty.
Yes, and I think we have finally reached the point where everything isn't slightly janky looking pixel art, which I really appreciate.
Yes.
Like, we have a few pixel art games on our service, and I don't want to diss pixel art or anyone who loves pixel art, but I'm kind of glad that it doesn't feel like 90% of indie development anymore, because it's never been my thing, at least.
I'll be real. That turned me off to indie for a couple years. Like, I understand, but I get tired of it. So.
Yeah. And I mean, there's games that pull it off well. Hyper Light Drifter's really pretty. But there's a lot of games that are just like, I'm going to do this, and I have no real idea why I'm doing this, so it's going to look dodgy.
Yep.
So,
anyway.
With that being said, yeah, seriously, everyone, anyone watching, go check out, I'm going to post a link just one more time. Go check out Dropleaf, dropleaf.io. Otherwise, oh yeah, and just for the audio listeners, ConCalPod, get a month free. Like, why not use it?
Give it a shot.
That's my sales pitch. Why not use it? It's a free month. But in any case, otherwise, as far as anything else goes, as always, the Constant Calibrating podcast is sponsored by the Web Around, which you can see right back here, all your green screen needs. I'm not currently using it because it just doesn't work with until the rest of the team gets them. There's no reason for me to use it for the podcast, but you get to look at how green it is behind me, and a random Babylon 5 figure.
One of these. It certainly would be a better background than like the door to the guest bathroom and a thermostat.
It's fine. The 2 podcasts ago was how my old setup was. My entire desk was flipped around, so if I didn't have the Web Around in place, which was just on the chair blocking stuff, it would just be the hazard space that is the office in this direction. So it could be a lot worse, I assure you. And I was always the idiot who's like, oh yeah, here, let me continue talking. Oh shit, the Web Around moved. Now you can just see existence. But webaround.com/shop, offer code ConCalPod as well.
I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, they're actually really cool. Like, this is not even just as our sponsor kind of thing. Like, they're actually just really cool people. Like, they're a mom and pop business. I really want to see them succeed because they're just like the nicest people in the fucking world. But that being said, Brad, do you want to do some outro stuff before we say goodbye?
Sure, why not? So, as always, we thank everyone for joining us. Vikram, thank you for joining us as well. This has been a blast.
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate how much fun you've been. Really, like we get. I mean, no disrespect to any of our previous guests, but so many people come on and they're just so business and so like this is this, and you've had fun. You've cut up with us, and that's what we want.
I'm a giant dork. Like, I am aware of the fact that I'm a giant dork. I can't really be anyone else compellingly.
Yeah, we had a period of time with the podcast where we're like, we're being professional now. We're going to be professional, and there's like a 30 or 40 episode span of constant calibrating that's just like, quite, yes, good show, good, yes, let's talk. Tell me about your business, and like and I go back and watch it, and I'm like, I'm an asshole who curses a lot and makes really weird jokes. And like earlier today, noticed that I was organizing something and I accidentally organized the letters P and O were appearing a lot. I accidentally organized it to say poop. I'm 32 years old. I laughed for 5 straight fucking minutes, so I came to the realization like a year or two ago that I'm like, nope. If people come on our show and they don't want to have that interaction, they just want to buy the numbers interview, we will give them that buy the numbers thing, and we will make some jokes here and there. But we always appreciate when somebody comes on and will shoot the shit with us.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. This has definitely been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
So, again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us. And we are constantly calibrating. We are constantlycalibrating.com. We are here every Monday evening at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. Switch it this week. At twitch.tv/constantlycalibrating. We are on Twitter at ConCalPod. We are on Facebook. Just look up Constantly Calibrating. On Twitter, I am at OG Xanos. Josh is at Bear Punch. And unless we have anything else, I'm going to get us out of here and say we bid you guys good sign off.
Go to what is it? Go to constantlycalibrating.com/cc iTunes. Leave a review. Is my only request ever. And I just noticed that I've improperly sized Brad's camera this entire fucking show. I only just noticed it. I don't know how that happened. Whatever. Part of the show. As Brad said, we bid you good sign off.